Welcome back, everyone. In this video, we're diving into what I believe may be one of the most profound discoveries connecting astronomy, astrology, and myth. It's a story that's written in the stars themselves. And this is a follow-up to my last video about the astrology of Three-Eye Atlas, but this time we're going to be going a lot deeper. Because as I've continued exploring, I've found what appears to be an undeniable link between the 1977 WOW signal and the three interstellar visitors, One-Eye Oumuamua, Two-Eye Borisov, and Three-Eye Atlas. The astrology of their charts, their precise celestial positions at key moments, forms a pattern that's too exact to ignore. And when you pair that with the myth of Atlas, the titan who holds up the heavens, the picture that emerges feels like a message, a transmission from a higher consciousness reaching out through space and time. We'll look at the natal chart for the WOW signal and the Perihelion charts for each of the interstellar objects, using the locations of the observatories that detected them to determine their natal positions on Earth and to figure out what story the cosmos is telling us. We'll also look at the years 1977, 2017, 2019, and now 2025, and we'll explore the major global events that occurred during these time points. And finally, we'll explore the deeper meaning of the name Atlas, not only as an astronomical acronym for the observatory that discovered Three-Eye Atlas, but as a direct link to the Greek titan of astronomy and endurance, and why that connection might be the key to decoding this entire myth unfolding before our eyes. There's a lot to uncover, and I promise some of these alignments will absolutely blow your mind, so let's get started. So let's first go to the WOW signal. The reason that I looked at this is because it's been theorized that the WOW signal could have been sent by Three-Eye Atlas because they both came from the constellation of Sagittarius, and they were within 9 degrees of each other from their origin location. So I think Avi Loeb mentioned this originally, and then I've seen a bunch of people in the comments talking about the WOW signal. So I looked into this, and basically what I did was I pulled up the natal chart for this WOW signal, and this was on the 15th of August in 1977 at 23:16 Eastern Time, and then 3:16 Universal Time the following day. And when you put in the location of Delaware, Ohio, which is where the Big Ear telescope was that detected this signal from Ohio State University, if you put in the exact coordinates in that time, what you'll find is that you have a chart that has an ascendant at exactly 3 degrees of Taurus. And it's basically almost conjunct with Chiron, which is at 5 degrees of Taurus. And then you have the descendant at 3 degrees of Scorpio with Uranus pretty close to that at 8 degrees. And then it's MC and IC are at 18 degrees of Capricorn and 18 degrees of Cancer, respectively. Now, what I want you to pay attention to for this is just the ascendant at 3 degrees of Taurus. That itself is the exact exaltation point of the moon. And now the moon is actually in Virgo on this chart. It's at 8 degrees of Virgo, along with Mercury is at 18 degrees of Virgo. So the moon is not at its exaltation point in this chart. You'll see in the next two charts that there'll definitely be something associated with the moon at 3 degrees of Taurus. But stay with me for a second. The additional thing that I found in this chart is that Venus is at exactly 15 degrees of Cancer. It enters this exact degree on this day, and it's precisely at 15 degrees and 20 minutes of Cancer when the WOW signal was detected. Now, if you go back and watch my previous video, one of my biggest discoveries that was the most profound, in my opinion, was that Jupiter, which I believe Three-Eye Atlas is really the final note of this message, and it's the final planet that it passes. And then Jupiter will be at 15 degrees of Cancer, basically from mid-February all the way through early April. So almost 2 months, Jupiter will be at 15 degrees of Cancer. And that is exactly Jupiter's exaltation point, at that exact degree of Cancer. So I believe that the WOW signal is the first ping that's alerting us of what's coming. And it's telling us that there's going to be something coming associated with Jupiter, because that's Jupiter's exaltation point, but it's going to be love. So we're going to be expanding love because Jupiter is about expansion. And then I think it's about also ancestral memory. So it feels like a message of love from the cosmos, from the galaxy, from entities in higher dimensions that we're not aware of currently, that are sending us love, telling us that we're here, we're communicating with you. And then it delivers in Three-Eye Atlas. Additionally, there's another connection here to 3i Atlas on this chart, and that is that Jupiter and Mars are both side by side in Gemini, which is right next to Cancer. And as you know, 3i Atlas passes very closely to Mars and Jupiter, as I went over in my previous video. So I believe that Mars and Jupiter are going to be the two planets that the message is passing through, or they are like the twins. They're in Gemini. They're the twins. They're male planets. They're going to be related to this message. And as you can see, 3i Atlas passes most closely to those two planets. So it's kind of preparing us for what's going to be coming. So we wouldn't know just looking at this chart originally, but now that we've seen 3i Atlas's path, we can actually see the significance of their placement here. And, Gemini is associated with Mercury, which is the messenger. So it's saying that Jupiter and Mars are going to be messengers. Now, there's a lot more that I could go into, but I just want to briefly touch on those things. But the Ascendant is kind of like the marker for what this message is about, I would say, the I am. And it's pointing to this degree of 3 degrees of Taurus. And now where this becomes truly remarkable is that if you look at the Perihelion for 1i Oumuamua, the Perihelion was the 9th of September 2017 at 11:28 Hawaii time, which is where the observatory was that detected it, and 21:28 Universal time. Essentially, this is the time that it was closest to the sun. And the first thing I noticed was that the moon was at 2 degrees and 57 minutes. So that's basically 3 minutes from exactly 3 degrees of Taurus, which is the moon's exaltation point. So we have, again, this same exact thing, but now the moon, which is exalted at 3 degrees of Taurus, is at this location on this chart. And on this chart, the ascendant is at 29 degrees of Scorpio, and the descendant is at 29 degrees of Taurus. And now, if you remember my previous video, there's this alignment between Mercury and Uranus basically along this axis on the perihelion chart. It's at 0 degrees of Gemini and 0 degrees of Sagittarius, but this is within 1 degree of that. So this is pretty much at this location. And this is exactly where the Pleiades is located in Taurus at 29 degrees. So we're seeing that this ascendant is kind of connected to the 3i Atlas chart, which is pretty interesting. And now if we look at the perihelion for 2i Borisov, this was on December 8th, 2019 at 16:33 local time or 13:33 universal time. And the location was in Crimea. And I believe I just put in the closest town I could find. But basically this is in the closest location to the observatory from the amateur astronomer who found it, whose name was Borisov. And on this chart, what is truly remarkable is that once again, the moon is at exactly 3 degrees of Taurus at its exaltation point. But not only that, Uranus, Atlas is a descendant of Uranus in Greek mythology, is also at exactly 3 degrees, and they're within 1 minute of each other. I mean, they're basically in perfect conjunction at this point. And I asked ChatGPT to calculate the odds of these 3 events happening, the ascendant of the wow signal, and then the moon being at exactly at that same degree, which is its exaltation point in the following 2 charts. And it was something like 1 in several million for all 3 of those. But then if you just looked at just the 2 interstellar objects being at that precise degree, it's like 1 in over 100,000 for just those 2 charts. So it's truly insane that they all share this. And then the other thing I wanted to point out on the Borisov chart is that its ascendant and descendant are at 9 degrees of Gemini and Sagittarius. And then its IC and MC are in Aquarius and Leo. And the reason I point that out is because if you look at the perihelion chart for 3i Atlas, this chart is an exact mirror of Borisov's. So everything is reversed. So the ascendant is at 9 degrees of Sagittarius, and the descendant is at 9 degrees of Gemini. And then the IC and the MC are flipped as well. They're not at the exact same degrees. The degrees for 3i Atlas are 21, which in numerology is 3. And in Borisov's chart, they're at 11 degrees, which is in numerology is 2. So you see 2 and 3. So that kind of connects to the 2i and the 3i. So, I mean, if you look at all 4 of these charts, they're all intimately connected between their ascendants and this 3 degrees of Taurus exaltation point of the moon. And what's interesting about 3i Atlas is that its moon goes into Aquarius. So the moon is no longer at this 3 degrees as it was in the previous 2 interstellar objects. And then I looked at the close approach to Mars and the close approach to Jupiter, and I found that the moon is in Aquarius for all 3 of these charts. So with the moon kind of symbolizing the emotional, humanity's emotional current, I think that it shows a shift. So we've shifted from Taurus to Aquarius. And I'll talk about the meaning of that later. But first, I just want to show you these profound connections here, which is truly remarkable. And then I just want to talk about the events that occurred on these dates. So let's just go back in time and talk about 1977 and then 2017 and 2019. So in 1977, during this August 15th wow signal, there was a lot that was going on around this time. So one thing that happened that's kind of random, Elvis Presley died on the night of August 15th, and his death is officially August 16th. But this signal was received, the wow signal was received after 11 p.m. So we don't know the precise time that Elvis died, but it was likely on this night. Additionally, this was kind of the dawn of the digital era. We had the second Apple personal computer being released in April of 1977. The ARPANET went global for the first time in 1977. And then what I found that is truly remarkable is that Voyager 1 and Voyager 2 spacecrafts were both launched in August and September of 1977. So the second Voyager 2 was actually launched first, surprisingly, on August 20th. So a couple days after the wow signal. And Voyager 2 was actually, it made flybys of Jupiter, Saturn. It took photos of Saturn's moon Titan, which is interesting. You'll see with the Greek myth. It had the first flyby of Uranus, and it found new moons on Uranus. And it also discovered the 2 rings on Neptune. It did a close flyby of Neptune. And then both Voyager 1 and Voyager 2 both reached interstellar space not too long ago. So Voyager 1 reached interstellar space in 2012, and then Voyager 2 reached it in 2018. So pretty interesting connection that we received these interstellar objects pretty close in time to when our own spacecrafts reach interstellar space. So pretty remarkable connections there. And not only that, the first Star Wars film, Star Wars A New Hope, had just released in May of 1977. And I think I don't need to tell you how huge that movie was and how it just became this empire that has lasted until today. It's truly taken over the modern myth and gotten humanity interested in the world at large. And then the Force, an invisible binding energy connecting all living things. It introduced the idea that consciousness itself is cosmic, that light and dark exist in a dynamic balance, and that awakening the inner force is the pathway to harmony, both within and across the galaxy. Also in November of 1977, Close Encounters of the Third Kind was released. And this is truly insane how similar this is to the wow signal. This is a film about a coded radio transmission from the stars, leading humanity to a point of contact. How crazy is that? So yeah, pretty wild, remarkable things that were going on in 1977 that relate to these interstellar objects. But then I wanted to kind of look at 2017 and 2019 for the first 2 interstellar objects. And what is the meaning of this 3 degrees of Taurus? What does that actually mean? And what I found was that there's actually a fixed star at this point as well. So it's not only the moon's exaltation point, but 3 degrees of Taurus is the location of Chiron, which is it's basically a bright star that's in one of the horns of the ram in Aries. The Western tropical zodiac is not perfectly aligned with the actual constellations. They've shifted because of precession. So even though this star is at 3 degrees of Taurus, it's actually in the horn of the ram. And the traditional meaning of Chiron is violence, sudden attack, decisive action, daring, boldness, raw force, injury, or confrontation. So this is not something that's going to be, harmonious, and this is definitely, violence and shock. So it's kind of like the breakthrough of energy for creation almost. It's like a birthing process or shaking things up. It represents initiation by impact. So Chiron is pretty It's violent, but it's also associated with an initiation. So what I want to do is talk about that some more and how I think that's related to these first two interstellar objects and what happened in humanity at those times. So Charatan carries the energy of like a first spark or a ramming, the impulse to break through the cosmic egg. It's a star of violence and bold action. It's not purely destructive, but it's catalytic, and it starts things and it pushes evolution forward. And when we see that moon at that exact point, at its exaltation point on both of those 1-eye and 2-eye charts, and then we think about what was happening at those times, you can kind of see the relation here, that it's almost like these interstellar messengers brought about these profound periods of change and confrontation and things that were going on. So for 1-eye Oumuamua, it was first detected in October, I think it was October 19th of 2017. We found it after it had passed its perihelion, which was on September 9th. And then I think 9 days later, on October 28th, the first anonymous messages were being posted on 4chan from what became known as QAnon. And QAnon was this massive internet craze that took over, and everyone was doing these decodes of these cryptic messages of some sort of insider that was believed to be within the Trump administration that was exposing all these truths about Hollywood and politicians and all this corruption, and how like there was going to be these mass arrests to basically get all these criminals with sealed indictments and things like that. So it took over the internet. It was insane, became this massive movement, and it really kind of like stirred up the search for truth and discernment of what's going on in the world. So I think that's definitely connected. And this was also during Trump's first administration. And if you think back, like there was just a lot of chaos at that time between like the left and the right, and just so much people just fighting each other and craziness. And I think that's all related to this first interstellar object. And then if we look at the second one, 2-eye Borisov, its perihelion was on December 8th of 2019. And this is basically right when the first news stories were coming out about the coronavirus and how it was starting to spread throughout China. I think the first cases were in other countries were detected at the beginning of the following year, but this is really when it became known to the public that there was this new disease that was spreading. And then the following whole year, I mean, in March, we entered a shutdown, and humanity had this pause of where we were shutting down all of our businesses, and a lot of people were just staying home and working from home, and it completely altered how we think of this work-life balance. And it's never truly gone back to that since then, because I think for a lot of us, it's questioned like, what are we doing with our time, with our lives? And it really disrupted things. And not only that, but it also caused a lot of controversy with the vaccines and people standing up for their sovereignty and their right to not go through these medical treatments if they didn't want to. And then this massive propaganda push for getting vaccinated and all that. There was huge divides there. Just a very tumultuous time period, but it also led to a lot of awakening and people realizing their sovereignty and their rights. So just truly two massive events that completely shook up humanity. And they both kind of coincide with the perihelions of these two interstellar objects. But then we have the third interstellar, and this one does not have the same signature of the moon at 3 degrees of Taurus, but the moon has shifted into Aquarius. So I believe these first two events kind of correspond with that Charatan energy, where it's like you're being shocked, the system is being shocked. And the moon itself, I have a video about the Saturn moon matrix, but you know, I believe that the moon is an artificial structure. It's the exact size of the sun in the sky. Like it perfectly eclipses the sun, and you know, it's way too large for a planet our size. It doesn't make any sense, its location. And even astrologers, like when you're reading an astrology calendar, the main thing is the location of the moon in each sign, because the moon plays such an important, it impacts our emotional state so strongly, where it's located in the energies that it's, the archetypal energy it's associated with. So I don't know if this is pointing to some sort of shift in the moon itself, like whether this is supposed to be exposed about, you know, who's behind humanity, this earth, this matrix that we're living in, like who's controlling us through these frequencies. I don't know if this is part of what we're supposed to discover, but it's very interesting that the moon's exaltation point is called out by the wow signal's ascendant, and then we see it again, the moon at that exact degree on both of those charts. So truly remarkable. And then, as I mentioned previously, if you look at the Borisov's chart, the ascendant and the descendant and the IC and the MC, it's an exact mirror flip for 3i Atlas's perihelion. The same degrees for the ascendant and descendant, just mirrored. And then the 4th and the 10th house, they're flipped as well, but they're at different degrees. And it's all this fire and air that's being called out, the mutability and fixed fire and air signs. So pretty interesting. But what I think that means is that we're kind of reflecting and learning from the events of this pandemic. We're now integrating what we've learned from that event. And I think it's kind of a shift. I don't see this event for 3i Atlas corresponding with any sort of great cataclysmic event or disruptive event like we did with 1i and 2i. I think now is a time for the spiritual awakening and the rebirth and the integration process. I think that's what this means. So another thing I want to touch on is the connection with Atlas, because the object is named 3i Atlas, and Atlas himself is a Titan in Greek mythology. And he is actually the descendant of Uranus or Uranus, the sky father, and Gaia, the earth mother. So those are his grandparents. And you'll see that Uranus is involved in some connections. Additionally, Atlas has many daughters, and 7 of them became the Pleiades constellation, which is in the very end degrees of Taurus and the 0 degree of Gemini. And then his oldest daughter, Maya, gave birth to Hermes with Zeus, and he is now known as Mercury, the planet Mercury. And if you look at the 3i Atlas perihelion chart, you'll see that there's this opposition between Uranus and Mercury at the 0 degrees of Gemini and Sagittarius. So we've got Earth in the middle, we've got Mercury at 0 degrees Sagittarius, we've got Uranus at 0 degrees of Gemini, and then the Pleiades are at basically 29 degrees of Taurus, or I think they even extend into 0 degrees of Gemini. So we have 4 people in Atlas's family in conjunction. So we've got both of his grandparents, Uranus and Gaia, his daughter, the Pleiades, and his grandson, Mercury, all in alignment on this day. So that is pretty crazy that this Greek mythology is, all these characters related to Atlas are all in alignment on this chart. And then further, there's a lot you can look at with Atlas himself in the mythology. And one of the things I found was that, well, Atlas is the bearer of the heavens, so he holds up the sky. And he was condemned to do that because the Olympians, led by Zeus, rebelled against the original Titans. And the Olympians won, the Titans lost. And Atlas himself was the leader of the Titans in battle. And he was condemned to hold up the heavens for eternity. That was his punishment. And if you think about holding up the sky and the earth, like separating the heavens from the earthly realm, that's kind of like this duality between the divine and the matter, kind of like holding them separate. Additionally, there's an Atlas bone, which is the very top vertebrae in the spine. And this is actually the point that holds up the skull and connects it to the spine. So it's kind of like a bridge between the heavens and your lower chakras, your lower energy centers, and the heart. So even within our own body, the Atlas bone itself mirrors kind of what Atlas is doing in the heavens or in myth. And then there's a lot more that I found just looking into Atlas, the name itself. So if you rearrange the letters of Atlas, if you spell Atlas backwards, it becomes Salt, A. And then if you take that A to the front, it becomes A Salt. And salt is very significant in alchemy. It's one of the 3 principles or states of matter in alchemy. So you have sulfur, mercury, and salt. And salt is kind of like the crystallization of this spirit and this fire, mercury and sulfur, into matter. So it's kind of like the divine going into form, the crystallized spirit. It's the divine within matter, which is something I think that this is leading us to with 3 Atlas. Additionally, if you rearrange some of the letters of Atlas, you can spell Salat, which is the second pillar of Islam, which is prayer. And this is basically how they pray 5 times a day, oriented towards Mecca. Additionally, you can rearrange the letters to become Talas, which is the basic monetary unit in Western Samoa. And the meaning of Samoa itself is holy center. So that's pretty interesting that there's a connection to the holy center. Additionally, the flag of Samoa contains a depiction of the Southern Cross, the constellation, the Southern Cross, known as the Crux. So we have kind of a connection here to the cross and the Christ or Christianity. So that's pretty interesting. Additionally, some people in the comments have noted that 3-eye Atlas kind of sounds like the third eye. And then Atlas also is a map, a book of maps. The Titan Atlas is depicted on these books of maps because he's associated with mapping things, the stars and things like that. So this could be interpreted as a map to the third eye or awakening of the third eye. And additionally, in numerology, the letter I is the number 9. So you have 3-9. 3I becomes 3-9, which is 12, which is 3, reduced to 3. And then Atlas sums to 53, which reduces to 8 in numerology. So you have 3 over 8, or 3 plus 8, which becomes 11. And 11 is one of the master numbers in numerology. Additionally, that could reduce to 2, which is associated with duality or relationship. Additionally, Atlas is directly connected to the Atlantic Ocean and Atlantis, the island of Atlantis. In Greek, Atlantikos is basically of Atlas, pertaining to Atlas. So the Atlantic Ocean is the Sea of Atlas, literally, and Atlantis is the island of Atlas. So both of those are connected to Atlas directly. So there's a lot of interesting things associated with this Atlas name itself and all the connections there that people have been pointing out in the comments. But I guess my takeaway, what I think this is pointing to is that it's pointing to this connection between the heavens and the material realm, the earth. And I believe we're kind of coming to a point where we're realizing that they're all connected. The divine is not separate from the material. In myth, Atlas holds them separate, but I think we're kind of realizing that they're not truly separated and they're all interconnected. There's also some crazy synchronicities with my own life. My phone number actually ends in the last 4 digits of 1977, 1977. And I've had this since I've been in high school. And I've always kind of wondered about what the meaning of this was. And now it's kind of being revealed what it is. But not only that, the area code and the first 3 digits. So the area code sums to 9 and the first 3 digits of the phone number sums to 9. So it's in numerology, it's 9/9/1977. So the 9/9 corresponds to the date of the Perihelion of Oumuamua, September 9th. But it also corresponds to the ascendant and the descendant axis for both 2-eye Borisov and 3-eye Atlas. So this 9/9 connects all 3 interstellar objects. And then the 1977 connects it to the wow signals. So my phone number literally connects all 4 of these events as well. So that's crazy coincidence in my opinion. But that's only one thing. Additionally, if you look at my natal chart for my actual birthday, one thing that I found, there's another connection between the Atlas myth. So I have a conjunction between Uranus and Mercury at exactly 15 degrees of Sagittarius. So we've got Atlas's grandfather, or the sky father, Uranus, and his grandson, Mercury, or Hermes, in the sign of Sagittarius, which is where both the wow signal and 3-eye Atlas came from. Pretty remarkable that this is in my birth chart. So there's almost like this fated connection here. And the Uranus and Mercury conjunction are in my 7th house. And the 7th house is that of relationship or those that you meet. So it's crazy that I'm meeting a conjunction between these 2 gods that are related to Atlas. And another interesting thing is that my ascendant is at 1 degree of Gemini, and then I've got Chiron at 4 degrees of Gemini. So I've got a Chiron almost conjunct with my ascendant, similar to the wow signals chart where the ascendant was at 3 degrees of Taurus, and then the Chiron was at 5 degrees. So very close connection between Chiron and the ascendant. And what Chiron represents is the wounded healer. So it's the archetype of our deepest, most formative wound. And the ascendant basically represents yourself in action, how you meet the world, and the instinctive way that we deal with life and the energy people feel when they encounter us. So this conjunction here is basically saying that your personality, presence, or body are intertwined with a core wound and a healing journey in your life. So it's almost saying that humanity has this wound that needs to be healed, a core wound. And I also have this in my chart too. So I don't know, maybe this is some reason why I'm being led to this message. I'm not exactly sure, but I just kind of felt compelled or called to this in some way that I can't explain through synchronicity. I'm not sure what led me to this. I just kind of had this knowing that I needed to look at these astrological charts for 3i Atlas. But I don't want to make this about myself, because the same thing appears in the Wow signals chart, which I believe is kind of a signal for what all of humanity needs to go through. And I believe that humanity itself is deeply wounded. I mean, especially over the last 2,000 years, we've just been through nonstop, like, religious persecution, and we've basically, it seems like we've been turned into these debt slaves. Like, we're just here to work and make money and amass material possessions and compare ourselves to other people, try to win the rat race and get ahead. And this is like so far from how we should be living. It just seems like we have a lot of trauma within our families, within our ancestry, that needs to be healed. There's been a lot of things that have happened over the last several thousand years that have corrupted our society in a lot of ways. A lot of truth has been suppressed, and we've been forced to just live in our lives in ways that aren't natural. So yeah, I think that that's kind of what that Chiron speaks to in conjunct with the Ascendant for the Wow signal and humanity. And there's one more personal synchronicity that I wanted to share with you all. So in 2022, I started picking up painting, acrylic painting, as a hobby. So I created a number of these paintings, and one day I just sat down with this empty canvas and I just started painting randomly. I didn't have anything planned, and I ended up creating this green, it transitioned from yellow to green to blue background, and then this like green orb in the center. And I never knew really what it was. My concept that I came up with at the time was that it was the heart chakra, because it's kind of like the green would be like the color of the heart chakra, and then this orb, I just thought of it like a chakra. But then I looked at it the other day randomly, and this was just after I had found out that 3i Atlas had shifted to blue. So I guess originally 3i Atlas looked yellow, and then it changed to green at some point. And then as it got close to the sun, like during its perihelion, apparently it shifted to a bluish color. And when I saw that painting and I had thought about that color shift of 3i Atlas itself, I'm like, this actually kind of looks like 3i Atlas. And I had done this painting in 2022. So this is 3 years before 3i Atlas even existed. So I just found that kind of crazy coincidental, another connection. It might just be, random, but I did find that weird that it had that same color signature as the change in 3i Atlas. So I just thought I'd share that. So anyways, that's the only other thing I had to share around my personal synchronicities. And I know that many people have complained in the previous video that Western Tropical does not line up with the actual constellations, that they've shifted due to precession. And I'm aware of that, but I guess the reason I'm using Western Tropical is I'm not using it to line up precisely with the actual stars. It's more about the energy within our solar system and the geometries associated with the seasonal changes. So all of the cardinal signs begin at the solstices and equinoxes. So I believe that there's definitely significant energy and archetypal energy associated with these seasonal changes that we experience on Earth. And most of the energy that we're encompassed in this solar system is from our sun, the Earth itself, the moon, and the planetary energies, and all of the electromagnetic connections between them. So it's less about, the background stars. I know there is energy coming in from the galaxies and things, but we do have a protective bubble around us that kind of helps shield us. The Earth itself has a protective bubble, our electromagnetic field. So I'm just primarily looking at the energies that we are most feeling, the strongest energies. And that's why I used Western Tropical. So in conclusion, this message, it seems to be through the Wow signal and the first two interstellar objects. It seems that we were brought to this breaking point. We first received a signal at the time when humanity was discovering a lot of things about the world. We were waking up to the current digital age. We were sending out interstellar travelers of our own into space, learning about our own solar system and the beyond. And we had this initiation at 3 degrees of Taurus during the Ascendant of that chart, which then came through in both 1-eye and 2-eye Perihelion charts. And we were confronted with these eruptions of truth, this stripping of illusion and sudden awakening through these crises of the pandemic and QAnon and, the Epstein trial and the Me Too movement. So many things have changed during this time period. And now it seems that with the mirror of Borisov's chart with 3-eye Atlas's Perihelion, now it's kind of integrating what we've learned, and we're past that breaking point, and the nervous system was shocked, and we've gone through a lot, but now it's time to integrate, to breathe and embody everything that we've learned over these last 8-9 years. I don't think this third messenger is here to bring another catastrophe or any sort of shock like the first two, but I think it's time that we rediscover the balance between the heaven and earth, the mind and body, just like Atlas is holding up the heavens and the earth. I think it's time to integrate and to figure out how we can bridge the gap between the mind and the heart and truly feel that connection to spirit within us. So I think it's a message of awakening, bringing things into alignment within ourselves and then within the outer world, and a time for rebirth within ourselves and then with society as a whole. We're not separate from the divine, but we are the salt principle, the divine crystallized within human form. And we need to remember that we are one with God and we are one with each other. We're all connected. And it's time that we remember that and stop feeling so separated and stop holding the stars or the heavens outside of ourselves and realize that they're connected through the Atlas, that bridge between the heavens and the body. Yeah, that's all I wanted to share today. There's way more that I could go into that I found, but I think these are the main themes that stick out to me when I'm looking at all this. I just wanted to say, for anyone that's still listening and anyone that's subscribed to the channel already, thank you so much. This channel, when I started it, I had been working on it for about 8 months or so, beginning in 2025, and had 55 subscribers at the time of when I released my first 3-eye Atlas video, and that just kind of exploded and brought me, at this point, I have 3,900 subscribers at the time of this recording, and I'm just so grateful that you all connected with that message, and you've really inspired me to be more authentic, to use my own voice. I was using AI-generated voices on most of my previous videos. I'm really grateful that you all are here and that you've connected with this, and let me know in the comments if there's anything else that you all find. I know I found a lot more that I haven't shared, but I'm sure there's a lot more that you have found. And, your comments are actually what inspired this second video. So hopefully we can all share what we're learning. But yeah, I've felt over the last 3 years this kind of shift more towards becoming centered and awakening within. And I think collectively as humanity's all going through this right now, and this 3-eye Atlas is kind of corresponding with that global shift in consciousness. I believe we've gone through the hard parts, and now it's time that we reflect and integrate. And now we're ready to start rebuilding a new age. So yeah, that's basically it. So thank you so much for listening to this video, watching this video. So I appreciate all of you. And I didn't even talk about, there's this other thing I found with Hercules and the golden apples and the West and his 11th labor. And if you actually look at the Perihelion chart, Atlas is in the 11th house over in Libra, and the sun is in early Scorpio, and that's associated with the West. So I actually think that myth is playing out on that chart. Maybe I'll do another video about that, but there's some really remarkable things that I found, and I just think it's amazing. Everything going on with this object, it's just so anomalous, and there's all these connections to myth and all these connections between the wow signal charts. It's not random. There's a higher consciousness communicating to us through these signals, and we just have to look and interpret it and feel it. Oh, and one other correction from my previous video. I had put on the chart that the year 142 AD was the last time that Saturn and Neptune were conjunct. But I realized that my search was actually doing conjunctions and oppositions, and that was an opposition. I actually think it's even more profound because we're kind of coming full circle from that opposition. In that time period, 142 AD was basically right after, Christ had gone and all of his disciples had passed away. And this was the formative years of the early Christian church. And this is when Rome had just taken over Jerusalem and been slaughtering all these early Jewish Christians, and the actual messages of Jesus were kind of destroyed. And this is when, Paul's teachings, the false apostle Paul,
who never met Jesus and doesn't qualify to be an apostle according to Jesus' own terms. His message of Jesus being the final blood sacrifice on the cross, and we just need to believe in him as our savior. And then the powerful Roman Empire adopted this message and made this its religion. So, we're coming full circle. The true teachings of Yeshua are being revealed again. Go to Aaron Apke's channel and watch a lot of the videos he's been doing on this subject. I don't do it justice, but I think the Christ consciousness is reawakening within the hearts of each of us. We just need to go back to that we need to respect each other. We need to love our neighbors as ourselves and love God with our whole heart. And that's really what this is about. We're unifying. It's a time of unity and remembering of who we really are. Yeah, that's all I have for this video. Thank you so much, and take care, everyone. And I'll leave you with this. You are loved. You are blessed. You are gifted. You are abundant. You are wise. You are divine. All are one. I am. Thank you so much, and take care, and bless you all. Bye.